Hey, welcome to this week's Table Talk podcast. It's Caleb. I'm here with David in a different part of the worship center today. We got shoved against a wall, tucked in a corner. But yeah, we're doing carpet cleaning today. So all the stage got cleared off and looks pretty empty in here. No chairs, nothing on the stage. It's a little scary.
Yep. We went for a different background, one that doesn't have stands and music stands up on the on the shelf right behind it.
Yep.
So, but it's always a big couple of days when we do the carpet cleaning. Everything has to be moved.
That's
every
right.
chair, in the children's ministry, every rocking chair, and the shelves and toy boxes, all that stuff has to come out.
Yeah.
So we can scrub those carpets.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Nice little end of summer cleaning though. So it's good. Yeah, trying to give the facility a rest, maybe.
Yes, there you go.
Maybe a nice little rest, replenishing, rejuvenating, even a reset, maybe.
Yes, maybe.
Yeah, no, I did that there. Yeah,
I like that.
So yeah, reset. You spoke this week on rest and kind of took us into the second week of this series. Did a great job. I love bringing in the story of Exodus and then the story of Elijah too. Like, what about those two stories kind of stood out to you as you were thinking about this sermon and preparing it? Like, why did those things kind of bubble to the top?
Yeah, well, I think there are. I think why I went with those two stories is they're just both great examples of like you have to rest.
Yeah,
and with Israel coming out of slavery, the idea of only free people can rest. If you are captured, if you are still in bondage, then it's hard to rest. Your mind's going to not be able to slow down. You're not. How do you even rest when you're not free to? When the enemy or when whatever just is constantly trying to keep you busy and doesn't want you to relax, doesn't want you to calm down, doesn't want you to think it's going to be okay, that God's in control. Yeah. And so we have to be free in order to rest and free from fear, which is part of it. It's like God did the work. He got them out of Egypt. They didn't have to do anything. They just believed and did their best to follow him, and he led them out of Egypt, just like Christ did all the work for us. Right? And so he made us free. We don't have to worry about that part. We can trust in him. We can be faithful, but also free from the sin that entangles us and how that can weigh us down. And when we're caught in a sin, when your life is just caught in a sin that you hate and you don't want to be, but it just keeps happening over and over and over again, how can you rest? And it feels like this heavy burden. And so we have to, and God offers freedom from that. I believe that we can go to him and that he will help us break those chains of sin and the addiction and curses, generational curses, and all those things that are on us that we are having a hard time fighting against. I believe he can lead us out of that slavery and bondage, so into freedom. Yeah. And then you have Elijah, and the story of Elijah is incredible because he has these super highs and super lows in his life, and he exhausts himself by his work, and he just is going so hard, and he wants to do what's right for God, and he's trying to do his best, and after defeating the prophets of Baal, 450 prophets of Baal, and actually God was the one that did that. It wasn't Elijah, but God used him, and he was working hard for that. He's exhausted, and it's just a beautiful example of God being like, okay, it's okay to rest, and God provides during his time of rest, which was another thing that I was like, oh, I could hit on that, but I was already, I was already 45, 48 minutes. It's like, I don't have to, but like in that season, God provided for him. In the Israelites, God provided for him. And even on the Sabbath days, God provided. He provided him rest. He provided him food. And when we rest, he provides for us too. And so we just talked about how it's a command and how it's super important for us to take time, and that God didn't make it as a burden, something that's supposed to weigh us down. It is it's for us, and it's a gift. It's not a burden; it's a gift. Yeah. And when you get that rest, you finally realize how. I don't know that we always realize how crazy our lives are and how stuck we are until we get the rest, and then you go, oh, I didn't realize how stressed I was
Yeah.
or exhausted I was.
Yeah. I meet with the spiritual director every couple of weeks, and one of the things that she says often is that we have to take time to let our souls catch up with our bodies. That our bodies are often moving at such fast pace. We're so jumping from job to school to work to whatever, activity to activity. And a lot of times, if we don't give ourselves that space to rest, not just physically, but also like kind of mentally, emotionally, spiritually, kind of to enter into that rest, our bodies and our souls are kind of out of sync with one another, and we kind of live and feel chaotic.
Yeah.
And the thing that you mentioned, I think, is really important, is that resting is a benefit and a blessing for us, but it's also a lesson for us in trusting God, because the whole point of, I mean, even with sleeping, I love the psalm that says, "He who watches Israel does not sleep nor slumber," right? While we sleep, God is still awake. God is still active. God's still protecting us and sustaining us through the night. God is still empowering our bodies to work and function as we rest. God doesn't rest, but as we rest, we trust that He's still working. So every night when we sleep, it's an act of trust that God is with us and watching over us. When we take a Sabbath rest on a weekend or whatever day you may try to take a Sabbath rest, right? It's an act of trust. It's, I believe God has given this gift to me, and it's an act of trust that God will still take care of the things that need to be taken care of. I don't run the world, He does. And so it's that act of kind of surrender and trust. And in that, God blesses us through the rest. And so I think it's just something for us to think about, because I think you mentioned this Sunday, we tend to put this burden on ourselves that we're responsible for everything. We have to fix everything. We're in control of everything. If it doesn't happen, if it's not up to us, it won't happen. And I think the idea of Sabbath and rest says, no, it's not up to you. It's not your job. It's not your responsibility. Not everything rests on your shoulders. God is in control. And so resting and Sabbathing is an act of trust and saying, I'm surrendering this to you because I know you're ultimately the one who has all the power here.
Yeah, and I would almost go as far to say, if we're not resting, if we're not taking that time, it's an act of distrust. And it's like, which is
Absolutely,
even
yeah.
scarier than well, I am trusting you. It's like saying, wait, you're not trusting God. And I think that's a scary place to be.
Yeah.
And it puts you in a place where you have to be God. And
it's a big job.
It's a big job, and we can't do it.
Yeah.
And I know I've had times where I have been up at night and I can't stop thinking, or wake up, go to sleep late because I'm worried about something, then wake up and it's just on my mind. And there's been times where it's like, oh, I'm not giving this to God.
Yeah.
And where I've been able to pray when I've been struggling to sleep or something, I've been able to pray, and God has given me rest. And a lot of times I will ask for that. Is like, I'll wake up, and if my mind is just going or stuff like that, I'll try to write something down, or try to, if it was something that I need to remember or whatever, I'll write it down or text myself or something like that. But then I go, Lord, please let me rest.
Yeah.
Let me sleep. And a lot of times he does that for me. And it's and it's just when you wake back up and you're like, okay, thank you, Lord. And I give him praise for that, because this life is overwhelming. And if we want it to, it could be never ending. There can always be something we're scared of, we're worried about, always something that is racking our nerves or keeping us awake. We all have family that we wrestle with or struggle with. We all have people at work that we wrestle with, that we struggle with. We all have emotions and fears and things that we struggle with, and we have to be willing to stop, give it to God, and go, okay, God, I'm trusting you enough that, like you said, I can go to sleep, and I can rest.
And it's hard. I mean, it's really hard. There have been a lot of times, for me, where I have noticed myself not resting, and then all of a sudden something very small happens, and it just blows up. Or you don't rest, you don't take that time to just sit and trust and rest in God's presence, and then you come to a time where you're almost sort of forced to rest. Like you have a day where you have nothing to do or whatever, and all of a sudden you just feel like you've been hit by a truck because all of that has caught up to you. And I think that's why that regular rhythm, that Sabbath rhythm, is so healthy, because if we're following it, and it doesn't have to look a certain way, but I think if we are building a Sabbath rest into our week, you are forcing yourself to enter into that time Whereas if you don't, you could go 2, 3, 4 weeks without really ever taking that time to be by yourself with God, resting in Him. And then when that kind of forced quiet or that forced rest comes, all that you're carrying is going to come up in that time. And so then it won't be productive rest because you're going to spend that time wrestling and walking and worrying through that stuff. So God, in this design, has given us a real gift, a real blessing. And, the form that Sabbath or rest takes can look different in each of our lives. But I think the function and the necessity of it is true for all of us. We have to rest to encounter God, to receive what He wants for us, but also just to experience the gift of what caring for ourselves look like as we rest and trust in God.
Yeah, and I would encourage people to look at it. I mean, because the Bible does this. Like you have your daily rest that you have with God. Well, you should be having daily. It doesn't have to be an hour or 2 hours or whatever. But when you get up in the morning, are you getting up and your feet are hitting the floor and you're just here, gotta get, or are you stopping and spending a little bit of time in prayer? And I feel like that's a tiny little Sabbath in your day.
It is. Yeah.
Like, okay, Lord, at the end of your day or when you get home from work or whatever, just to sit and to pray and spend time is a small Sabbath that we can take. And then you have but when you look at it, you have daily, but then they would have a weekly Sabbath, and then they would have Sabbaths where they celebrated and they celebrated things, and then they had the year of Jubilee or every 7 years they had a Sabbath, right? So every 7th year their land rested. They gave their land a break. Even the land, God's saying that needs a break. So they didn't plant things and stuff like that. So I think that's something we have to think about too. Is like this is a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, like where we do something special and set it aside. And then you have like the Jubilee, which is like just a setting free.
Every 50 years.
Every 50 years, which is this huge moment. We don't have any record of Israel actually doing that. But that was what God asked them to do, and they didn't want to because rest is hard. A reset is difficult. And it's hard for us to be willing to submit what we think is these huge, important, like, how could God ever expect me to do that? But then when you start practicing it, it's like, oh, how could I go?
How did I miss that?
Yeah, how could I go without it?
Yeah, it is. It's reorienting your rhythm of your life is difficult. Reorienting your priorities is difficult. If it wasn't difficult, everyone would be super in shape and would eat great food all the time and whatever, right? But it's hard. I mean, because we get into patterns and we choose often what's easier, and convenient. But I think you're exactly right. As we engage with rest, as we engage with these kind of spiritual reset practices, as we engage with God, I think what we end up finding is that the discipline that it takes to spend time in prayer, to spend time in rest, actually makes our lives easier or lighter than the lack of discipline it takes to not do it. Does that make sense? Oh, yeah. And the reason for that is that Jesus says his yoke is easy and his burden is light. When we don't take on Jesus's yoke, we're going to be yoked with something else. A yoke in farming equipment terms is just something that links two things together so that they could pull a plow or something to till the field. And if we're not yoked to Jesus, we will be yoked to something else. We'll be yoked to our ability to produce or our status or our job or whatever that is. That thing becomes our identity and we're yoked to it. And any other yoke besides Jesus's is heavy and hard and dark. But Jesus says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And so while it does seem like, I don't know if I can take the time to slow down to rest, I don't know if I can take the time to slow down and pray, the dangerous side is not. Because while it may seem like it takes some kind of discipline and intention to do that, the risk of not doing it, I think, actually makes our lives feel way more constricting and less free and heavier than they would if we just took the time to rest and spend it with Him.
Yeah, and it's interesting with the yoke because they put two of those together. It does give more power, and depending on what you're yoked to, right? If you have two oxen that are powerful, and then it makes it easier. It takes a lot of the burden off of you and stuff like that. But when you're yoked to something that's wild, something that you can't control, it's hard. It makes the job way harder.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we know that we're yoked to Christ, and that when we're yoked to Him, our lives are going to be easier because he takes on the work, he takes on all of that, and it's just so much better. And I think your analogy with working out is a good one, where it's like, we know it's better for you.
Yeah,
I feel better when I'm doing it. But it does take some discipline. Yeah, and I have to be willing to spend time doing it and thinking about it, and so I think that was a great analogy.
Well, I guess like to make the comparison with that too, just real quick, the thing about the gym or being healthy or going to work out or whatever is like oftentimes the hardest decision to make is just showing up. You know, if you can have the discipline to just show up, you're going to get something positive out of being there. It's the same thing I think with rest and prayer. If we can just kind of forge that in us to just show up, I think God will bless that time. It may not be an hour, it may not be 2, it may not be some mountaintop spiritual experience, but I think if we will show up, God will honor that, and God will meet us there, and God will bless us, and God will equip us and form us to experience life in Him every time we do to show up that way.
Yeah, and going back to the slavery, the freedom analogy, I think sometimes we think, well, that's going to restrict me or that's going to hold me back. And it's like, actually, it brings you more freedom. And it brings you more. It's like, well, how do I spend my time? Or this is going to restrict me. If I have a day that I try not to do any work, or whether it's at work or on the computer, or even if I have a day that I don't do that, or if I have 5 hours in the morning that I say, I'm unplugging and I'm not doing anything like that, then that really restricts me. But what I think it actually ends up doing is it ends up being a blessing, and it gives you strength and energy, and it brings clarity in things. I don't know how many times I've rested, and I've been wrestling with stuff all day and stuff, and then when I finally give it to God and I let it go and say, okay, God's got this, and I rest and I stop thinking about it for a while, I come back and I go, oh, I've got some clarity on this. So I think even in that, the tension of like, well, it restricts me, but it actually gives you more freedom.
Yep, exactly. It really changes a lot, and that is true. I think one of the things we realize that in Jesus, surrender is actually freedom, because he it was for freedom's sake, right? That He came for us. It's for freedom you've been set free, and so, but it does take that surrendering of our time and our intention and our kind of practices to experience that. So it's really good stuff. Thanks for walking us through this Sunday, and we've got one more week of this series. Yeah,
it was good for me. And I said it at the very beginning. I think prayer is a foundation of both this week and next week. We have to spend time in prayer. We have to see what God's calling. We have to allow Him to rest. And this upcoming week, which is the next reset or next series in the reset, last series, we're talking about serving, right? And so it's you start with prayer and stuff like that, and then you see where God's leading you, and then you allow God to work in you. And serving, I think, is a great next step, and it's a place where I think there are tons of places and tons of places that we can spend our time, and the quiet time, the prayer time, resting prepares our hearts for where we should be serving and what we should be doing.
God created us with a rhythm of working and resting, and so and communion with Him at the center of all of it. So it is like, we want to rest. We also want to work or serve or create or contribute, right, to what He's doing in the world. And so that's kind of what we'll talk about Sunday a little bit. How's God wired you? What are some ways you can serve, whether that's here in the community or your job, whatever that looks like. But just know that God's gifted you and wired you to contribute meaningful things in the world. Ephesians says that we're His masterpiece, right? We are created with good works in mind, that God prepared in advance for us to do. So we'll talk about that Sunday, and I hope that'll be kind of an encouraging kind of last stop on this reset series before we get into asking for a friend.
Yeah, I think because I talked about we have to be different than the rest of the world, and I think rest is part of that, prayer is part of that, and I think the world would say, well, work or doing service, acts of service, and things like that. That's the opposite of rest. And what's cool is guys like, no, those work together.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see how that plays out. Unless you just walk up and you go, I'm the lead pastor. I'm saying you're not working enough.
That's right.
You're not serving.
That's right.
David was wrong last week.
Don't listen to him.
You guys need to do more.
That's right. Yeah.
So no, I think they go. I think they go hand in hand, and the way God designed it, it's a beautiful design to serve and to work and then to rest.
It's almost like he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Yep. We need both.
Yep. Well, cool. Well, hey, we will dig back into this next week on the last week of the Reset series, and I think this time next week school might be back in session, or at least right about that time. So
it's getting close.
Yeah. So enjoy that, parents and kids. Good luck on the start of the school year, and we will see you guys next week on the Table Talk podcast. Have a good one.